Elder,
How are you, Tabang?
I'm good.
You
And you?
well? Opa, we've already had one accident here with our setup here.
No problem, no problem.
Let's,
People
let's
normally
get.
call me Black.
Just want to get organized
You
here.
okay?
There we go. Good. Good. Can't
Is it
complain.
okay?
Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, let me just quickly. Thank you. I needed to screenshot this first. How was your day?
Yeah, it was good. Action packed. I had a lot to do because I'm leaving for Mozambique tomorrow. So yeah, I've got a lot to do.
What's happening in Mozambique? Are you going to buy a Mozambican club?
No, it's not football related.
Or it's personal?
Yeah, it's personal. Yeah, but funny enough, I just came back from football training at Amazulu because my youngest son is on trial there at the moment for their academy. So yeah, so I've been taking him to the trainings there quite often now.
How, how old is he?
He's 13.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you were in Greece right now.
No, no, no. I'm in beautiful Durban, eh?
Oh, that's why we had some kind of miscommunication about the times and stuff. But it's okay, it's okay. So I wanted to talk about Amazulu. So like that's where everything started. That's where
That's
basically
right.
everything started. But before we get into that, you were born and bred in Greece. When do you come to South Africa? When do you come to, and why was that?
Tabang, I was born in Greece, you're right, and I came when I was 6 years old. My parents wanted to immigrate to South Africa, but yeah, at that stage, I was the only one who came to South Africa with my father because we couldn't really afford to fly the whole family across. So because I wasn't at school, I was at pre-primary, so I could fly over. And then when he found a job here in South Africa, and when he could save up enough money, he flew my brother, who was already at school because he's older than me, and he flew my mother over as well after.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense now because I was wondering how did you get here? So
Yeah,
the whole culture change. How do you adapt to that? Because Greece is a whole different place. When you come to South Africa, you are in a Zulu kingdom now. How do you adapt to that?
uh, and yeah, I was lucky enough that we came straight to Durban. So yeah, so in the Zulu Kingdom, and it's one of the most beautiful places to live. So I'm glad they actually chose that over Josie or maybe Cape Town or other places. Um, yeah, so yeah, it was like I said, it was beautiful to come here at a young age. I couldn't speak the language at all. I couldn't speak English, so I was put into a pre-primary school, and I couldn't speak the language. But obviously, the only thing I could do was, which I was pretty good at from a young age, was play soccer, and that's how I met my first friends. And some of those guys I'm still friends with now, like 45 years, 44 years later.
That's beautiful. That's the part of friends. Sorry about that. I'm receiving a call.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So, but when you don't know the language, doesn't that reflect into you being bullied? How does that work out for you? Because I'm wondering if you are new, you don't even know the language, people might take advantage of you. How's that for you?
Well, it was funny enough that you mentioned it. My father had to pick me up on the first day because I got into a fight because I
Ooh.
couldn't communicate. So it's not it's the funniest story because I only lasted my first day for like 2 hours. Then he had to come and pick me up. But he obviously spoke to me and he said, "Look, you've got to be a little bit calmer. Try and learn the language and then and adapt." But yeah, those are the stories of a young, obviously, immigrant coming to South Africa. But obviously, you know better than me that the people in South Africa are very welcoming people. So it was actually quite easy to settle in.
Oh, okay, that's very true. But I know they can be wild as well. I see Jogos Koumantarakis here. Is that your father or your sibling?
Uh, yeah, probably one, either a sibling or cousins. I'm not sure who just joined now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I almost surprised you. Okay, that's kind of crazy. So, like, now you're in Durban, you playing football. Like, where are you playing? Because I understand you did not start at Amazon. Where are you playing? What's happening?
Okay, so I
Oh,
started, obviously, we lived at a town called Westville, so I just started at a local club there called Chilton Park. And obviously, as a 6 year old, I started, 5.5, 6 years old. So it was just like all the other kids following the ball around. But very quickly, obviously, I was lucky to be talented as a youngster, and a lot of the clubs at that stage were, some of the better clubs in the Durban area were always asking for me to join. So I joined Westville Football Club, and there I played all the way till I was about 15 years old, and that's when I started playing senior soccer, and that's how it started. And at that senior soccer was the first time I was actually seen by Clive Barker. So the late Clive Barker, and what a mentor and what a great, what a great person for football, for South African football as well. And so, as a 15-year-old, he saw me and he said to me, "Look, if you continue this way, you're going to be playing professional football very soon." And he was right, because 2 years later, he asked me to sign for Amazulu.
oh, that's why he loved you so much.
Yeah, I think Clive had that talent. To lucky enough that I was one of the people that he saw. He scouted and saw somebody that at a young age, and then he saw me through the years. And in 2 years later, he was already calling my parents and saying it's time for him to go professional. And obviously, my parents, my father especially, who's very knowledgeable on football, said, "I don't think he's ready, and I don't think he should be playing at the pro level." And Clive said, "Listen, I've been in the coaching game for a long time, and I want him, and he must come." So it was a baptism of fire, but it was fantastic.
So, how do you feel by then? Because your father is kind of saying, no, he's not ready, and then the coach is giving you opportunity of your lifetime. How's that for you?
Well, yeah. Look, that was one of the things that I came from. I came from a family, or a father who was he was a hard father. He was very hard, but strict, and but also loving. So, but he used to tell me, "Look, George, there's better players there. There's no chance you're going to make it." But of course, Clive said, "Look, you can't look at it that way. He's
No.
17, the other players are 25, 26. Of course, they're going to be better than him, but if he trains with them for a while, he should improve, and then he'll get his opportunities." And Clive was proven right, and my father was proven wrong, but I know where my father was coming from. He was being super critical, because he wanted me to understand that, there's a lot of disappointment that might come
Yeah.
from it. So, so he was preparing me for that.
Yeah, that's very good because some into the jungle, and then oh, it's a big problem. It's a big problem. I'm glad he did that for you. So, like, that's how you joined Amazulu. Clive Barker spotted
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
you. But at Amazulu, I think you stayed for 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. I think you had 4 apps. How did that
That's
happen, and why did you move so fast?
Well, look, I was privileged to play at that time. I mean, Big George Durnley was the striker there. He was also a Bafana striker. Jomo was there as a striker, also a Bafana player. Asen Demande was there, also one of the greats of South African football. So, my opportunities were very little,
Yeah,
but what I learned from them was amazing. So, I'm indebted to a lot of players in my career, but I was also had the foresight and the brains to look and see what they're doing and try and match what they're doing, instead of looking at it as, oh, I'm better than them at a young age, where I realized
yeah,
I wasn't, but I could learn from them. And I think that was what managed to get me in those 6 months, those few appearances. And then obviously one of the other great coaches in South Africa that I was lucky to be under was Mike McCabe. He's now obviously a football agent.
yeah.
And Mike McCabe had signed me in the third division the year before, and I was top goal scorer in the third division at the NSL at that time. And that's why Clive was convinced that I could score a lot of goals and play in the PSL. At that time it was the NSL still, but obviously. So as soon as I got a few caps and I had improved even more,
Yeah.
Mike McCarb got the job at Manning Rangers, and then he straight away phoned me and he said, listen, I've spoken to Clive. Clive won't stand in your way to move from Amazulu. I think you've got a better opportunity at Manning Rangers. They were the weaker club at the time, and
Yeah.
obviously I would have more opportunities to play.
How does that feel for you? Because I think at that point you are frustrated, you're not really playing, and you know that you're very good, but you understand that these players here, they're top, 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 and now you have a big opportunity. How does that feel for you?
Tabang, to be honest, I was honored to be playing with those, like the names I've just told you, George Durnley, Jomo Laba, Ace Demande. It was, Joel Fire. I mean, some of the players,
Oh,
were legendary players. So of course I was frustrated because any youngster wants to play, but when you see the caliber of players that you're up against in your own team to try and compete, you very soon realize that maybe it is the time to, even though it was a short stay at Amazulu, and I love Amazulu, it's my Durban club because it was my first professional club. So it has a special place in my heart. But obviously, I knew it was time to move on and try and get some game time.
And then when you go to many, sorry, I think that's where a lot of people got familiar with you, because that's when you were scoring a whole lot of goals. That's when, is that the same time you got introduced to Bafana Bafana, right? You were
Yes.
flying, you were flying. Like, what would you say was the reason behind that success?
Well, I think Manning Rangers was a very special time as well. I think in modern day football, people that don't really understand the dynamic so far back, if you take Leicester City winning in the Premier League a few years back, it's the same thing. Manning Rangers winning the first, the inaugural PSL. So Manning Rangers was a club that would always get close to relegation and always fight for relegation. It was financially nowhere near the top big clubs. So, we had a decent team, but I think Gordon Ingerson, when he came in with some very novel ideas. He also understood playing the players to their strength. And once he achieved that, I think Manning Rangers was on a path that no one could really stop. People thought they could, but they didn't realize the camaraderie and the team spirit that we had. And that was the main thing that got us to where we are. So I can't say it was an individual performance by any player in the team. At that year, I think there were maybe 5 or 6 players that deserved Bafana Bafana call-ups. A few of them did get, like Clinton Larson, Bradley Muir, myself. A few more deserved chances to get into that Bafana side, but obviously at that stage, Bafana Bafana was also a really, really tough side to get into. I mean, we all know in '96 they were African Nations winners. By '97, when Manning Rangers was winning the inaugural PSL, the '97-'98 season, it was a really tough team to break into. So as a youngster, again, I was privileged to be playing against, when I say training against guys like, Shoes Mashwero, Dr. Kumalo, up front, Sean Bartlett, who's basically one of my idols. Even though we're very close in age, he's one of my idols. And obviously at that stage, it was also Phil Masinga, legends of South African football. And I, as a youngster, because I scored so many goals that year and I finished second top goal scorer, I was lucky enough to be called up. And then again, Clive Barker at that stage was the Bafana coach. And he realized that, he had seen me and seen my progression, and he realized that it's time for me to also get a chance in the national setup.
But Big George, this is crazy, right? Because just about a year ago, you were fighting for position, like you were not getting game time, and now the youngster that's getting all these runs with the legends, none that Zumas. It's you, the young boy that's coming in. And just a few years ago, you couldn't even break into your own club, and now you're becoming a star. Like that's a crazy switch up.
Yeah, that's correct. But I was also lucky that at that stage there was the under 20 national team that had been set up. Then there was Amagluglu's under 23 national team. So I was getting a lot of international experience at just below Bafana level, which was very, very important grounding for me to be able to make a debut and to perform in Bafana. It was difficult because I was very young at that stage, and obviously a lot of those players were in their prime. I mean, guys like Dr. Kumalo was like 26, 27, and Phil Masinga was 25, 26. So me as a 21-year-old or a 20-year-old breaking into that team, especially I think we were probably at the highest ranking we've ever been as a
Yeah.
footballing nation. So it was a tough introduction, but if you don't toughen up, you get left behind, and so I could have been left behind, but lucky I had the right mentality to be able to stay and stick around.
When you look at Bafana now, do you think we could ever? Do you think we are close to emulating what happened back then, or do you think it's going to take about a decade more?
I think where we've dropped the ball is at SAFA level. To be perfectly honest, I think SAFA is where the ball's been dropped, and they need to take responsibility for what's happened in South African football. There are a lot of factors that need to be changed as well, but I think it needs to start at the top. SAFA needs to understand that they are ultimately responsible for the decline, and the minute they sort their situation out and they sort the top out, it will eventually, over a decade, like you said, it will filter down grassroots, and in the next decade, there's no reason why we can't have a team that can win African nations again. But it needs to start now, and in 10, 15 years, we'll see the fruits of the right decisions being made by the right people, which I feel there's a lot of the wrong people in those positions. Guys like Lucas Radebe and ex-pros that are, that have been at the top level, have played football. They might not be as good at an administrative level, but what they understand from a footballing side of things needs to be integrated to the administration and then move forward as one.
Yes, because when I look at cricket, rugby, the people in charge, they played before. Unlike in soccer, where you find that the people in charge of SAFA, they've never played football, or they just played local football. They've never been in the professional side, which makes a big difference because they don't know what's happening. So I agree with that fully.
And no disrespect to the people that are at SAFA.
Yes.
It's got to the point where it needs change now, and it needs fundamental changes. And once that happens, and the right people are back in there with the right, with the right passion and knowledge of the modern football and modern experiences, especially overseas, like a guy like Lucas Radebe. I mean, I keep saying he should be the president of the South African Football Association. He's a brand ambassador. He's a fantastic guy. He's successful in his own right, and I think guys like him should be. I know that he would make himself available if that opportunity came, but it needs to be in a situation where he's controlling the governing body, not being dictated to.
I totally agree because I think he's actually challenging to be the next SAFA president, even though Danny Jordan has been re-elected last year, which means he still has some time to serve. But we'll see what happens. I hope he gets to be the man in charge. But what I wanted to ask is that I see, like, especially in this past window, we've transferred about 8 to 9 plus internationally. Do you think that can help us in bettering the squad, like the Bafana national team? Do you think that will impact the national team?
I think we've realized that only local players doesn't work. So we do have talented local players, But the most successful time in South African football is when we had local players that went overseas, were very successful, and were continuing to be the basic, the how do you call it, the core of the Bafana squad, and then bringing local players in to make the rest of the squad, and learning from those international players. Playing international football is a total different ball game. Playing overseas is a totally different dynamic to South African football. And again, I'm not disrespecting South African-based players. I was a South African-based player, so my grounding was here. So I will never disrespect it. But of course, I became a totally different player once I went to Europe.
Facts right there. Before we get to Europe, Man in Rangers, you're scoring a whole lot of goals. I'm not sure. I think you scored about 40 something. And then you are now breaking records of the highest transfer margin. Like, I think you were the most expensive player by 96, 97.
Yes.
How does that impact your career? Does that give you pressure, or did that make you? I want to understand, because that's a big price tag right there. That's big responsibility.
Don't forget, when I was 22 when that record transfer, so it was the record local transfer, and the record overseas transfer, I think at the time, was Mark Fish. So what happened is, as a local transfer, it was by far the highest transfer ever at the time. Obviously now it's been surpassed, and if you think about it, it was 500,000 rand at the time. Now players will laugh and say, "Oh, that's nothing. It's peanuts." But don't forget, I was also earning 500 rand a month at the time, so it's all relative. Yeah. So I finished at
not 5,000.
500. So I was top goal scorer for Manning Rangers. I was second top goal scorer in the country behind Wilfred Mugabe, who was a Zimbabwean international. I then made a record transfer to SuperSport, where I then started earning very good money. But of course, there was pressure, because by earning that and being a record transfer at 23 now, I had to produce the goods, and thank goodness I did. And I finished top goal scorer that season, and then obviously finishing second top goal scorer and first top goal scorer in 2 seasons in a row. All the European clubs saw that at a young age I was scoring so many goals. They wanted me in Europe. I also, sometimes I think back, I wish I'd stayed in South Africa as well, because I think I would have broken a lot of goal scoring records in South Africa. If I had played 10 more years like I played overseas, I played 11 years overseas. If I'd played those 11 in South Africa, I might have finished on 300, 350 goals in the PSL, which I don't think, would have even come. I don't think any other player would have come close in the PSL. I know that obviously Daniel Madao was playing NSL and a bit of PSL, but not much. So I think PSL era, I probably would have broken a lot of records, yeah.
That's right. Because in a short space of time, you scored a whole lot of goals. Like, at some point, let's just talk about the goals you scored, in Rangers only. That's a lot. Even if, like, we have players right now that haven't reached that number of goals, as they played for more than 4 or 5 seasons in the PSL. So that's crazy. So now you move into Europe. How's that for you? Because it's kind of like back home. Is that the feeling, or is it another different environment?
Look, it's a totally different environment, and obviously I was more suited as a target man, and as a big, tall player. I was more suited to maybe the European style of football, where a striker, when he makes his run, the midfielders are looking to play him immediately. In South African football, the dynamic is a little bit different. The midfielders tend to hold on the ball a lot more. They tend to play, more on their own, and then as a last resort, look to their striker. So I think it suited me a lot. And in my first season in Europe, I was in double-digit figures. So it suited me well. And I played 1 season at a smaller club in Europe, and then immediately FC Basel signed me. So in my second season, so the progression was was quite extreme, going from South African football, small club, to super sports for one season, and then one season at a smaller European club, and then FC Basel coming in and signing me. Yeah.
How does that even feel? Like, that's FC Basel. It's not just any club. Like, how do you even get the call? How do you get notified? And what was your reaction to that?
Well, obviously, my first season in Europe was a good season with a weak club, which was also a relegation zone club,
Yes.
but I was scoring a lot of goals. So again, at that stage, Christian Gross, who had just left Tottenham Hotspurs in the Premier League, came back to Switzerland, signed for FC Basel, and in fact came to watch a game that I was playing against the national team defender from Switzerland, and I scored 2 goals. And he said, who the hell is this guy? And they said, oh, he's some South African guy. He's first year in the Swiss league. And he says, well, that's the guy I want to sign. And I was one of his first signings for FC Basel. So, it just, scoring goals is very important. You get, the more goals you score, the more you get seen. And that was where the progression came. But funny enough, it took me 4 seasons overseas before I got another call up for Bafana. So I made
Yes.
4 caps for Bafana. Then I waited 4 years before I got my next cap. And I was playing some of my best football, and no one in South Africa knew what I was doing. But obviously I knew what I was doing, and I knew that if I continued doing what I can do, eventually Bafana will come back and realize that, it's time to look at me again.
Do you think social media helps break those barriers? Because sometimes you find that place, but we don't know much about them. But now that there's social media, we actually post about them, we report about. Do you think that makes a difference in the nowadays culture?
For sure, because I was lost to South African football for those 4 years. Occasionally a reporter from South Africa would call me and then would find out my stats and would say, wow, I mean, like, you haven't stopped scoring. Why hasn't Bafana called you up? I said, well, maybe that's your job to write the article, and maybe I haven't another opportunity. But I never look back. I always look forward, and I'm very forward thinking. And obviously, when I did get my opportunity, which was back when obviously at that stage Jomo was thrown in the deep end a month or 2 before the World Cup, he said, if I'm going to take the job, I want to call back not just me in particular, but I want to call back any player that's playing overseas. I want him back in South Africa to have a look at him, to assess him, and I will eliminate the players that I don't want. And obviously, Jomo knew me from the time at Manning Rangers and Supersport. When he saw me train the first time, he came up to me and he said, George, to be perfectly honest, when I called you, I thought after 2 training sessions, you would be on the next flight back. He says, but from what I've seen, he says, you've gone from being like a player that I thought, well, yeah, if I need a goal scorer, I've got somebody. But at that time, you also had other top, really good goal scorers in the squad. Benny McCarthy, guys, that could score goals and have proven themselves at a higher level than I had ever achieved. So when he saw me, he said, wow, it's not just the goal scorer or the player that I remember 4 years ago. You're a totally different player. So he said to me, I'll be honest with you, you have a very good chance. And that was after 2 trainings. He said, you've got a very good chance of being in my squad. Just continue what you're doing. And, and I thank him for being honest and also giving me the chance, because Jomo could have said, you know what, I have in my head another idea, another set of players. I haven't seen George. Let him go back to where he came from. And he was honest, and he stayed true to his word. I was his 23rd player in the squad, and funny enough, he picked me as number 23, and I ended up playing all 3 games at the World Cup, which was amazing.
And you ended up wearing number 23. Oh, wait, you wore number 23? I'm a look.
At Amagluk, I played number 9. I used to wear, I think, I wore 9 if I can remember. And in the national team, I wore quite a few numbers. Number 13, I wore a few times. but it varied according to the squad that was there. Yeah.
Yes, I remember number two. I remember, Big Josh. I want to tell you something. Like personally, I loved you so much. Like I really, really loved you. Like for real, for real. Not only because you're talking now, but I would vouch for you because I know, like back then, a lot of people did not know too much about you. I don't know where I found out about you, but I really loved you. And one of my favorite games was when I don't remember what we were playing against, but they tore your T-shirt during the game. If you remember the Bafana game,
That was
in the first few
Turkey.
seconds,
It was just before the World Cup when we beat Turkey 2-0. And don't forget, Turkey came third in that World Cup, which was amazing, which shows you the kind of team that we had.
yes,
You don't beat Turkey 2-0
yes,
one game before the World Cup starts because they were
yes.
preparing properly. And that's the time when my shirt was pulled off. Yeah, the guy ripped it off. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you had three incidents where they were pulling your shirt off, but you would never fall, and that's one thing that, besides that, I love that thing you want the goal, you want to go forward. That's what I love the most about you. And I know that because obviously, like we had, like you said, Rizuma and all that, we had other people that are really great. But what made me love you the most was your resilience, like how you really wanted to play for the national team. I could feel you just by watching that. Yo, man, Josh is a whole different player. And that game, like I was laughing even today. I still remember that game by the touchline when they when they pulled your shirt.
Tabang, you've touched on something quite important, and it's very important to me also to get it across to people, whoever's listening. Is it was even though I was playing overseas, and I never saw it as a hassle to come back to play for my country. South Africa gave me so much that I couldn't see it, never to return to come and play again. I understand that certain players, especially of the caliber of Benny McCarthy, who was treated with utter disrespect at times by the South African Football Association. I can understand him turning around and saying, hey guys, it's a respect thing, and once I'm treated with respect, I'll come back and play.
Yeah,
Obviously, it was detrimental for the national team, but it was very important that guys like Benny stood up for the players in the squad and said, SAFA needs to start treating the players with respect and starting to look at them as more important than themselves as administrators. And once that is understood by SAFA, I think a lot will change in South African football.
that is very true. Like speaking about that, Benny did the same thing at Pirates. I had a lot of players in interviews that when he came back to Pirates, he was very vocal. He helped change a lot of bad cultures. So what you're saying is very true. But back to your career, do you remember your first game with FC Basel?
Yeah, I do. Funny enough, I scored 4 goals. Yeah, I scored 4 goals on my debut. One was even a bicycle kick, so it was an amazing debut. Yeah, so it's not many times I've scored 4 times in my career as a pro footballer. Obviously, as a junior footballer, I scored a lot of times. But yeah,
Yeah.
and funny enough, I nearly never made that debut because of transfer. I got transferred on the Friday just in time because my
Oh,
ex-club was realizing they were trying to make more money from me. But the transfer went through on the Friday. I got my clearance on the Friday night. On the Saturday afternoon, 3 o'clock, I was scoring 4 goals. So yeah, it was it was a good debut.
that's crazy. And FC Basel was such a good time for you because you won the Swiss League and you won you played in Champions League. That's
Yeah, there's not
I
many players that
played.
can say they've played Champions League football, obviously, and so I scored. I think I scored that season. I scored in all competitions for Basel. I scored like 34 goals.
Yeah.
We won the league. We won the cup, so it was a double. Basel hadn't won the league in 27 years, and they hadn't won the cup in 35 years, and we won the double that year. Then we went to Champions League. That was the famous year. That's the first year that Basel made the Champions League. That year we knocked out Liverpool in the Champions League, and we went through. We knocked out Spartak Moscow, Liverpool. We went through with Valencia, and us went through to the next group phase. And at that group phase, which at that stage was one group phase, then you would move to a second group phase, and then you would play knockout football. And the second group phase was Manchester United,
Yes,
Juventus,
yes,
Juventus Turin,
yes.
and Deportivo La Coruña and FC Basel. And we still finished third in that group, so we didn't finish last. So, yeah, it was an amazing time, and obviously being exposed to European football was another level up, to Champions League. Because I'd played in the Europa League, I'd played before, but I'd never played Champions League football.
Yes, and Big George, I understand. Like after that, you moved away, and then you had a lot of like injuries that kind of ended your career in a way. But when you look back to you not almost being part of the squad in actually almost quitting at Amazon because that was the route you were going to quit with the route that you were taking because you were not going to play. But
Yeah.
when you look at that, and now you're playing in the Champions League, how does that feel? Because that's a big, big jump. That's almost unexpected.
Yeah, it was, like I said, a very steep learning curve. Like every year, it was almost like a step up. So
Yeah,
it was consistently a step up. So it was quite hard to catch up. But once I settled in and I was playing at a very high level, all these things, like all the doors started opening up again. So Champions League football, back in the Bafana squad, and and playing. So although I still think, I made my debut in Bafana in 2000 and in 2007, early on in 2007, and then I played my last game in 2000. No, sorry, not in 2007. Sorry, in 1997 I made my debut,
yeah.
and then in 2005 I finished my career. For such a long time in the Bafana squad, I only got 13 caps. So I don't begrudge it, but I know that I deserved maybe to have played at least another 20, 30 games. But and then again, I was happy that I was involved. Most of my caps were playing against like top international teams and in World Cups. So I'm happy that those caps were, that I got to play them.
That's, that's very true. Speaking about the level you were playing, and when I think about all the other players that you were playing with in the national team, it makes sense why the team was so strong because you guys were playing in like top levels and you were playing against top teams. Because when you say Deportivo La Coruña, it's not the same as this one of now. That one, it was super hot. That was a
And
different one.
Valencia as well at the time was beating Real Madrid and was beating
Yeah,
Barcelona. They finished top of the league. And, we playing against the top Spanish club at that stage. The next group phase, we played Juventus, who had won the Italian league. We played Manchester United, who had won the English league. And Deportivo La Coruña had finished second in that year in the Spanish league. So it was, playing against teams that are like a different level. Guys like Del Piero, Van Nistelrooy, Beckham, Giggs, Scholes, it's just crazy level of play. And but it's such a nice experience. It's something you can't really explain until you get there.
I want to tell you something crazy because I used to call you my local Van Nistelrooy. You know because like I could associate you with him a lot more, even though he was more into like kind of winging into striking Yana. But yeah,
But
every time I watched him,
you're too kind. Van Nistelrooy was what an amazing player. But yeah, he could score goals for fun, and it was to watch him play. Playing against him as well. Funny enough, when we played Manchester United, he scored a hat-trick against us. So when we played them, so yeah, it was an amazing thing to watch as well. Yeah, and of course, no one remembers things like Quinton Fortune was playing for that Manchester United side for a 10-year period when they were winning maybe the league 8 years out of the 10, they won it. And guys like Quinton Fortune were playing as starters in a side like that, where now we can't get players to start in maybe a team in the Belgian league or a team in the, in Denmark, or, so it was a different caliber of players, so, Benny McCarthy playing Champions League finals. He won a Champions League. He didn't just play the Champions League. So it's a different caliber of player. So Lucas Kadebe, Mark Fish, stalwarts in the Premier League and guys that were playing regular for not 1 or 2 seasons, but for 10, 15 seasons in a row.
Facts. Jomo is out in Copenhagen. It was just crazy. It was,
Yeah.
yeah. So, Big Josh, when you retired, because I don't think it's what you wanted. I think you were forced to retire because of injuries. I don't know if I'm wrong by that. How did that feel? And did you at some point feel like it did not end in your way? You wish you could have played a bit more?
Look, I think it was a blessing in disguise, funny enough, because I did finish very early at 31. I would love to
Yeah.
have played 1 or 2 more seasons, because the experience I had as a striker, it would have been, a totally different. I would have scored a hell of a lot more goals, because as an experienced striker, you stop making unnecessary runs and you start making the kind of runs that lead to productive results like goals. So I was a bit upset that I had to finish early, but in the long run, I'm glad, because I still can play football now. I'm 50. I can still play with my kids, and I still feel good. And all my injuries are not. I don't feel those injuries anymore. So if I had continued playing 1 or 2 more seasons, probably I would have had the kind of problems that would have led to me not being able to play now.
Hey, Big George, you look 33 right now.
Thank you. I'm turning 50 in a few months, so I'll be 50 very soon.
It's hard to believe. If I didn't watch you growing up, I wouldn't believe that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't even know of the era that I played in. Yeah.
Crazy. I want to know, like, now after football, what are you doing after football? And I heard some rumors that you wanted to buy a certain PSL club. How true was that, and what happened in between?
Well, it was Amazulu, so it's no secret that it was Amazulu that I tried to buy. So at the time, obviously, I'd got an overseas-based club, which it was FC Basel, and they had put up a vast majority of money, and it was sitting in a bank account here in South Africa, and waiting
Oh,
for the possibility of me to purchase the club. I would have had a controlling interest in the club, which would have been 51%. They would have had 49%. I'd already made a partnership with my old high school, and had told them that should this deal go through, that I would want to set up an academy which would go through the high school so the kids are educated. The academy would all have been paid for by Amazulu and obviously by the overseas-based club, and we would have had an academy that would have been bringing in youngsters at a much earlier stage. Amazulu has partnered up with certain schools in the last 10, 15 years as well. They've tried to do it. It has been moderately successful, but obviously the type of money that would have been plowed into it would have been a different level, because, with exchange rates for them, ultimately they were looking for one Benny McCarthy or one Quinton Fortune or one Delron Buckley or whatever, whoever you want to name, which would have paid back their initial investment by double if they just found one of these kind of players. So that was the idea. It never happened, and obviously, as time went by, those clubs don't wait around. They made. I know that they have connections down South America. They have certain connections in other European countries as well. So that opportunity has gone.
do you look at it and feel like you could have done better, or do you look at Amazon now and feel like, wow, I wouldn't have done that. I'm proud of this team.
No, I never look at something and try and compare. Obviously, I would have attempted to have done better, but I never disrespect the clubs that are,
Yeah,
working under the conditions that they're working, under the financial restraints that some of the clubs are working under. They've done very, very well given the circumstances. So I would never compare myself to that. But of course, if I'd been given the opportunity, I would have tried my very best to have surpassed what they have achieved now. Whether I would have been successful or not, we can't speculate on that. You can't tell until you're in that situation.
yeah, that's facts. That's fact. And also, you have to be respectful. So what is Big Josh doing right now? Is Big Josh an agent? Are you working in football anymore, or are you cut ties with football? You're just doing your own thing. Because I see you traveling.
Football, the only football that I'm involved in is junior football, where I used to coaching my daughter's team, then my son's teams, and just being involved in football and trying to give back. But obviously, I'm not a player's agent. I'm not involved in professional football, although I do have a lot of friends and people that are now coaching
Yeah.
internationally, overseas, here in South Africa. So I'm still involved, but just I'm a fan now, and obviously, if one of my children are talented enough, obviously to pass on that knowledge and try and get them to also play professionally, if that's the situation. But of course, it's a step-by-step process, and if that ever happens, I'll be happy. If it doesn't, I'll be just as happy.
But does that mean you took some courses? Because I think, Big George, even if maybe you might not come back as a coach, you can be a strikers coach or something like that. I feel like expertise can be used. Like you did a whole lot that we still can't find in this generation. I think your knowledge can help us a lot.
For sure, I agree with you, but obviously my business interests now lie in I'm in industrial property. I own a lot of property and I do a lot of developments in industrial property. That's
Yeah,
our core business. I've also got an overseas-based company. It's on my profile. The Insta page is Logan Golf NZL. But we've got a homepage. It's a golf company, funny enough. But it's one of the businesses I'm involved in. But you can find that all on my Insta page, and you can find the link through to get onto that, and you can see some of the businesses that I own. Other than that, I'm in property, and that's my core business. Obviously, as a lawyer, I studied as a lawyer. So while I was doing all these things, formatting ranges and Amazulu, I was still studying at university. So it was a
yeah.
very difficult period in my career. But like I say to any child, you need your education. You might want to be a professional footballer, but keep your education, have that as a priority, and you can do both. You can't leave the one to follow the other.
It's crazy because we're talking LLB here. It's not just any cause. How
Yeah,
do you do that while playing football? Like,
yeah.
that's
So I got
crazy.
a BCom LLB, but I have a lot of friends to thank, which are now lawyers, and some of them are judges even. I have a lot of friends and people that realized that I was struggling to keep up, and they would help me with notes and with helping me with what to study. And obviously that was quite important for me, and I still have some of those friendships today. Like I said, some of the people that were studying with me are now judges or
Yeah.
very high-powered lawyers, and are very, at the top of their game and their profession. And so I always have them to thank, because they also helped me through my study. Obviously, no one could write exams for me, but they could help me, with the process of understanding things better, taking their time to explain stuff. So I'm indebted to a lot of people in my life who were, really helpful, and they took the time out to help me out. Sorry,
I
just had
totally.
a bit of a problem there with the phone. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's okay. I understand, Big George. I want to thank you for coming through. I don't want to waste any more of your time. I want to appreciate you for this conversation, but I also feel like there's a lot that could be shared, but at this time I wanted to focus more on your career instead of other things. I feel I should invite you maybe next year, earlier next year. We can talk about other aspects of football, especially how South Africa.
Tabang, it's a pleasure, and I'm honoured that you thought of me, and I'm more than happy to come back on, and maybe not focus on my career so much, and more focus on other aspects that might help youngsters, or to have a better understanding about that you have to approach things holistically and not just think you're only a footballer. You've got to be educated and a footballer, and you can do both.
Yes, yes, yes. Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Tabang, thank you very much. A great show, and look forward to hearing from you again.
All right, God bless.
Thank you.